everyone, welcome to the CBDC series. I'll be going with you through all the important elements that you need to know about central bank digital currencies, how they can be tested, how they can be deployed, how programmable money can evolve. So keep subscribing, keep listening, and hopefully we'll bring you some value. First topic, after the introductory video, we talked about CBDC, we talked about how CBDC works in general. And today we're gonna tackle a specific topic, which is about testing. So the first step that the central bank wanting to deploy central bank digital currencies would do is the testing. And in order to test, first of all, we need to determine what is the central bank testing for. Usually a central bank will be testing for an initial deployment in order to develop policies around the major deployment. We'll be also testing security from a security standpoint, and we'll be also testing the controls that central banks could have on a digital currency. So let's tackle the first topic, which is testing. The first thing that we would like to test from a CBDC standpoint is the infrastructure. So as we understand, central bank digital currency is nothing more than digital currency that is controlled and issued by a central bank, on which the central bank or the sovereign institution has. The first thing we would like to test here is on which infrastructure this central bank digital currency should be deployed. A few elements here to keep in mind is that, first of all, we need to be able to launch central bank digital currency that has some type of infrastructure that is interoperable with other CBDCs, because central bank digital currency does not live on its own. The value of a currency is generally relative to the value of other currencies, which are reflected on the volume of trade, the price of that currency, etc., etc. So the first thing that we need to look for is an infrastructure that is interoperable, okay? Interoperability between infrastructures, meaning that if I'm country X, what I want is issue a CBDC that is issued on an infrastructure that could be linked or could be interoperable or could be connected somehow to another currency, okay, to another environment. So the first thing we're gonna tackle here is the infrastructure. So infrastructure, we have varieties of solutions. There are certain branded solutions, and since 3 years, we have no shortage of solutions that use decentralized ledger technology in order to fulfill the main mission of digital currency, okay? And in this case, this is a central bank controlled digital currency. So first thing that we need to look at is which infrastructure. An obvious choice here, I think certain central banks might decide to go otherwise, but I think an obvious choice here for any central bank is to use, for example, Hyperledger, okay? So Hyperledger is basically a decentralized ledger technology infrastructure that has been working in connecting with one, big tech, which is basically enterprise, okay? Enterprise blockchain, but also can be connected to other type of blockchain, including decentralized blockchains, okay? So here we focus on this because Hyperledger, for example, is an environment that has a lot of there are a lot of contributors to that environment, and it's becoming basically the skeleton of blockchain, enterprise blockchain deployment. So Hyperledger here allows you to do what? First of all, it allows you to issue a digital currency, okay? On top of it allows you to issue basically anything or any value and record any transactions on a decentralized ledger, okay? And second, it gives you controls of who sees what type of, you can basically program things into the deployment, program specific characteristics or specific utilities or specific functions into the digital asset that you're wishing to issue. Obviously, it gives you, so basically it groups, the controls are made in such a way that it groups which type of users can see which type of information. It groups various group basically by function, okay? And it allows this digital currency or this digital asset to live in a blockchain in which you have segregation from the standpoint of which user profile has access to which information. Although all the information is available on the Hyperledger, access to that information could be controlled, okay? So controls are very important. The second thing also is it allows admin rights. Admin rights is the right to be able to change from the core a certain characteristic of the digital asset, okay, at any point in time. And also it gives specific functions that this digital asset that lives on this blockchain could have. So specific functions means that you could basically issue an asset with a piece of program that does certain functionalities, and I can give you an example later on. This is very true and very useful from the standpoint of self-reporting or special purpose money, okay? And we will get to that example later on. Last not least, the ability for this digital asset to be connectable to other blockchain, to be basically any digital asset that lives on Hyperledger Besu has the ability to integrate with any other digital asset infrastructure that lives on the same blockchain. So it offers this immediate interoperability from the standpoint of the digital asset itself, but also from the standpoint of becoming a connection hub, okay? And this is very useful as we see that central banks are trying to transform themselves from a monetary policy maker, supply of money maker, etc., to a connection hub, okay? A connection hub between various payment institutions, big tech companies, enterprise, even startups. So as central banks open up their mission statement and open up their use case from a general standpoint, it will find very useful the ability to leverage a technology that allows them an immediate connectivity. And this is basically the future, and this is one of the most important things that will, for certain economies, make a lot of sense, especially economies that are a little bit isolated from the global financial system. Either they were isolated by consequences of various policies and central bank policies and politics. They find themselves today in 2021 a little bit isolated from varieties from other financial systems. So it will basically enable a faster integration into the global financial system. Next point here that I will explain is once we have tested the infrastructure, so how do we do to test this infrastructure? Well, it's easy. With DLTify, we're able basically to launch a trial digital asset, a trial CBDC, okay? And launch it on Hyperledger Besu or on any other blockchain of choice for a central bank, and basically demonstrate exactly what type of connectivities, what type of controls, and what type of customization can that digital currency have. We're able to test the infrastructure by deploying a CBDC on top of, for example, Hyperledger, and study and demonstrate all the various connectivities that are possible, the various programmability of that CBDC, and the various controls that a central bank might require in order to fulfill its mission statement via the deployment of a new CBDC. So the first step is infrastructure. The second topic that we'll be testing is institutional deployment. And an institutional deployment basically looks at what is the impact of CBDC when we have a settlement system in which, for example, equities settle against CBDC? The obvious answer to this is basically that settlement moves from a period of T+1, T+2 into an immediate settlement, because here we're basically settling two digital assets which can be done immediately after the trade. So here what we study, we simulate what a stock market or equities market in that country looks like, okay? And we basically implement a settlement environment in which you have stock against cash replaced by stock against CBDC. Okay? And this basically eliminates a long trail of paper processing, okay? And brings the settlement period from T+1, T+2 to an instant environment. Okay? This is the main effect. The second main effect on the institutional perspective is the fact that a lot of closed economy countries are suffering from accessibility of their stock exchanges or their equities, their local equities, into foreign investors. Up until now, if you wanted to buy a stock in a sub-Saharan country, or let's say the CFA zone, okay? The CFA zone, if you want to buy a stock in the Ivory Coast stock exchange, etc., well, what you need is that you need to send money, for example, from Europe to a local broker, and that local broker will be settling that transaction, so you're exposed to a variety of things, delay of settlement, because your trade that you do in the Ivory Coast will probably take about 7 days to settle. You need to send the money, and then the transaction settles, and then you get your titles of the stock, etc. So from an accessibility standpoint, the CBDC will improve dramatically the settlement period, okay? So we'll improve it basically from a T+2 to an instant environment. So from an institutional standpoint, this makes a lot of sense, especially for frontier markets, as it will basically open up these frontier markets into international investors, and maybe from an accessibility standpoint, it could even go beyond that to a more retail type of offering, meaning that, for example, a frontier market stock exchange could be targeting directly investors from first world country, or could be directly targeting investors of their diasporas living in first world countries to buy equities in their homeland. So this is particularly interesting. We know that, for example, countries like the Philippines are really studying this. Countries in general where you have high level of remittance revenues made by the diaspora are really interested in implementing these type of solutions, because it basically gives their local market more accessibility to foreign investors by creating an environment where you have immediate settlement, immediate in and out. So this is the second thing that we will be testing. And the third initiative that we will be testing is deployments to retail, okay? So deployments to retail will incorporate varieties of things. The first one is, what is the impact of direct to consumer? So direct implementations such as direct to citizen payment, let's say subsidy payments or stimulus, direct to citizen stimulus, or these stimulus checks, for example, that we're seeing happening all around the world, direct aid from the central banks to the population, okay? And in this segment here, we have varieties of implementations that we could be testing. One of them would be, for example, programmable money, or what we call special purpose money. So this is basically money issued directly by central banks to the citizens, okay? And this is targeted towards stimulating consumption, okay? So here we can talk about, and I will get to this example later on. But basically here we can imagine money that has limited lifespan. So for example, a central bank, in order to stimulate an economy, they would send stimulus payments into their citizens, but these payments will be CBDC, so basically will be sent into each and every citizen's in his own wallet, and will have a specificity. For example, it will have the specificity of not being savable. So let's say I'm a central bank X, I send $1,000 to citizen Y, but that $1,000 is aimed at consumption, okay? Or consumption of certain type of goods. So the citizen, once he receives that money, he's able to go, for example, and buy with that money only local products, okay? And the money is programmable, so it only settles against goods that are already included in target list, for example. Another example could be that I'm a government, I send money that is not savable. So that means that if the citizen does not consume it, it will disappear from his wallet after 1 month, okay? So, and you have varieties of applications like this where that money, that CBDC, has a special purpose. And is settled only against certain type of assets. All this could be pre-programmed into CBDC issuances in order to help central banks fulfill their missions directly via targeted deployment of that money. So I think that these are basically the 3 major deployments that could be tested, starting by the infrastructure, second, seeing the institutional impact, and third, of course, having a good view on what type of direct to retail or direct to citizen deployment that a CBDC can enjoy and what type of mission CBDC can achieve. In my next video, I'll be talking about special purpose money. So this is basically money that is issued by central bank that has a special purpose and which has utilities and features that are pre-programmed into the money to help the central bank reach its goals. Thank you for following this video.